Tammi, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Spectacular. Hey, welcome everyone to our session today on foolproof follow-up systems. And today we're going to dive into three critical hacks that when you really nail this amongst many other things that we teach in Never Ending Referrals, you're going to convert more. You're going to have more opportunities to get to kitchen tables and put together those transactions that we so desire right now. And before we get into this, Tammi, you and I are the co-coaches of a program called Never Ending Referrals. We're also bowl coaches, but tell them a little bit about Tammi in case they're not familiar with Tammi.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I have been with Keller Williams going on, I think this is year 19, actually. I can't even believe that. I am based out of North Carolina. I'm in the Mooresville Market Center. I have been on the Bold team for 9 years. Also, Keller Williams University Master Faculty and co-coach with you. And this is truly where all the magic happens, is when we get into how do we convert in the database. So excited about today. And yet before we jump in, tell them a little bit about Steve.
Well, Steve, 25 years Keller Williams, Tammi. And, gosh, began this journey when we were 3,800 agents. Had the pleasure of, I was coming from RE/MAX as one of the top 20 RE/MAX agents in the state of Texas, and got recruited by a guy named Gary Keller to lead his Austin Northwest Market Center as a team leader. And so had the privilege of working for Gary 4.5 years, led the early development of the Keller Williams Heartland region, operate a couple of market centers. Like you, Keller Williams University Master Faculty, Bold coach, and most importantly, what we get to do right here, which this is a passion for you and I. We know that your business is in your database is your business. You hear Jason Abrams, Tammi, all the time talk about a thing called a data bank. And today's element that we're going to dive into is the art of follow-up, and maybe the art and science of follow-up. Because Tammi, why is this topic so vital? In fact, you even told me about a conversation that was very revealing you had with one of your coaches years ago about follow-up, and talk to us about that just to set the table for us.
Well, everybody, I write down this number. 70% of your business comes from follow-up. It's very, very rarely that first point of contact. Obviously, some of the time that does happen, the majority of the time it does not. And it's probably been maybe 15 years ago, having a conversation with my one-on-one coach. And I had sent him my schedule. He had asked for my schedule that week prior to our call. And when we got on our call, he said, "Tammi, I don't see follow-up on your calendar." And I, you fight for things with your coach sometimes. And that's what I did. And I said, "I am doing the follow-up. I mean, I make it happen. It just really wasn't intentional." So here's what he had me do. I was having a great year. I was really proud of where I was. He had me grab my calculator, put my GCI into the calculator, and divide it by 0.70. And of course, my eyes lit up. I said, "Well, what is that number? I really like that number, Steve." And he said, "Well, Tammi, that's where your GCI should be if you were consistently following up with people and had those foolproof systems in place to help you do that." And so, guys, that changed my business. It changed my focus. It changed my schedule. It changed everything around the database. And, there are some hacks that are out there that help us stay in touch with people so you don't lose 70% of the potential business. And right now, with where the markets are, and you guys are working harder for every single transaction, this is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to work on this. I'm going to pull up the slides. And again, you're going to have the recording of all this. So, feverishly write all the notes that you desire, and then certainly put questions in the chat. And we're here to serve you during the next 45 minutes or so to take you on this journey. So more money through foolproof follow-up systems. Now, Tammi, in fact, we're going to watch a video clip from one of our great interviews that we do on Never Ending Referrals every month. On the art of follow-up and why this is so important as well. And one of the things you're going to hear the person talk about is having a multi-channel approach to the things we do. Now, in the art of follow-up and the art of connecting with our database, to create the connection or the flow that is so absolutely necessary, you've got to have a multi-channel approach. Now, if you've only got one channel, that's like TV of the Stone Ages, you know, where you had rabbit ears and maybe you had 2 or 3 channels. You got to go get all the channels, man. We're going cable deluxe, get them all. And how can I communicate with my database? Well, it's email. It's a system for making sure the phone calls occur. It's the direct mail, it's social. And we've got to hit all of these elements to be truly in connection or flow with our database. And Tammi, to demonstrate this, and I think clearly the vital nature of this, I want to start with a story about Barbara. And, you know, Barbara, well, I get a phone call. I'm driving down the interstate and I get a phone call, and on the dashboard, it says Barbara DeLamo. And I don't know if y'all have ever had that experience. If you're like me, you probably have. And that is, you're going, I don't know who that is, but they're showing up on my screen. I must know them. And so you pick up the phone. And so I hit the button on my steering wheel. I go, hey, Barbara, what's going on? Now, guys, I don't have a clue who Barbara is. And yet, you know, I must know her. She's in my contacts. And I go, and by the way, I'm going to have to use her voice, Tammi, for effect, because she's got that good Texas twang that just, you know, you got to use it. And she goes, well, hi, Steve. And I said, well, hey, Barbara, what's going on? What can I do for you? She goes, well, I'm calling to wish you a happy birthday. And I go, well, thanks. And I go, well, Barbara, you're a little early. I mean, my birthday's not till the end of the month. And it was like July 9th, and my birthday's July 31st. By the way, write that down. I'd love to get a greeting from you on the 31st. And, you know, and she goes, I know, I wanted to be the first one. She goes, am I the first one? I go, well, you sure are. And again, guys, I don't have a clue who this person is. And then all of a sudden, you know, Barbara goes, well, you know, hey, are you still doing Bold? And I said, yeah, I sure am. And she goes, you know, I took Bold from you. The first Bold they ever did in San Antonio in 2009. I just love Bold. And she goes, you know, where are you doing Bold these days? Are you still doing Bold? And I go, yeah. And we talked about Bold for a couple of minutes. And she goes, you know, when you were in San Antonio, I know you have had a girlfriend that lived here. You mentioned being from San Antonio area, you know, originally. What was her name? And she sponsored one of our Bolds. And I said, Shelly. She goes, you guys still together? Yeah, we sure are. And she goes, wow, okay. She was cool, really liked her. And she said, by the way, you know, you mentioned maybe even moving back to this area, moving to San Antonio. Did you ever make the move? I said, actually, about 2.5 years ago. She goes, gosh, I guess I was a little late on that one. I said, well, of course, Barbara, I represented myself. And we had a nice talk about San Antonio. She said, what are you loving about San Antonio? What have you been doing for fun? She gave us a nice referral to a great brunch place. And then we wrapped up the conversation. She said, what kind of big plans you and Shelly have coming up down the road? And we talked about a trip to Egypt and some of our travels that we had planned. And the whole conversation, Tammi, was 6 minutes.
Yep.
Guys, I want you to think about this, 6 minutes. And now, after I hung up the phone, I felt a complete connection from Barbara. So to who the heck was Barbara, to feeling completely connected with Barbara in 6 minutes. And guys, what did Barbara do to create that connection? Put it in the chat. What was the key element of that conversation that got she and I connected?
Yeah, there are definitely some things that she did, because here's the thing. She didn't really ask you for any referrals or anything. There you go. Jesse, you nailed it. So Casey.
Yeah.
Connected, Brenda, good job. And so she did, right? She literally, and when we talk about Ford being the conversation framework for a really powerful conversation, family, friends, occupation, recreation, and dreams, you don't have to talk about all of those things in one phone call, even though Barbara did. And she did it in a way that was very seamless. Here's what I would have you all write down if you're not already using that. Those are the things that matter most to Steve. Those are the things that matter most to all of us, are your family of friends, what you do for a living, what you like to do for fun and in your time off. What are your goals? What are your dreams? So when you ask questions about those things, you automatically create connection. So one of the things as we start to talk about follow-up that can happen are people, you know, Steve, maybe it's been too long. Like Barbara hadn't talked to you. You went back and found out it had been like 5 years, and you're going to talk about that in just a moment. And there's that awkwardness, like, how do I connect with somebody? And Barbara did that. She picked up the phone, she just was like, I'm going to do it. And she did.
Well, and here's the interesting thing, Tammy, it's so here we are. And after I hung up the phone, one of the things I noticed on the dash as I was hanging up is it didn't say Barbara DeLamo. It said maybe Barbara DeLamo. And that piqued my state there around hold it. That means she's in my correspondence somewhere. I've had some kind of correspondence with Barbara. And hour and a half later, when I got home, I went into my email, and let me share with you guys what I found. And there's a massive lesson in this.
Mhm.
And what I found was this.
Mm.
I had been getting an email every 3 weeks or so for 7 years.
Mm.
7 years.
Had you ever opened it?
What's that?
Had you ever opened an email?
Apparently nothing made a big enough impact for me to either open it or for it to be memorable. And it's not that they weren't valuable emails potentially. They were just that she and I were not in flow. We were not in connection. And because here's what happened. All these emails. And then 2 weeks later or so, Tammy, I get an email from her. And what do?
Now you open it.
Now I open it. I scroll down to the bottom and go, there's what she looks like. Right. And then I start to put it together, and now we're creating a real relationship. A few weeks later, I get another email. What do, Tammy?
You open it again.
I open it, and now because we're in flow, that the flow has established the foundation for the relationship. The conversation established the foundation for the relationship that allowed it to move to that level. So one of the things you're going to hear us say later, and we'll say it again, is the conversation is the relationship. It's so true. And having a multi-channel approach is what creates the flow. Now, before we get into follow-up, Tammy, it's just one of these things where we go back and we think about the value of staying in flow and staying connected with people and gaining their referrals and their trust. And what is this how buyers found their agent? What does this tell us about the vitalness of having great follow-up?
Well, if I just go clear over to the right-hand side in 2022, between those top two numbers, I mean, we're at 50%. 50% of those people, those were connections with their real estate agent. If they hadn't kept in touch with them, they wouldn't have those referrals. So, that's the power in staying in relationship with people and not just always looking for the now business with new people. Same thing, look at the sellers. That's even a higher number. I mean, oh my goodness, what is that, 63%? Yeah.
So when you look at this, just understand this is, everybody that's chasing leads through Zillow or everything else, nothing bad about that. It's just that understand the bulk of your opportunity is right here. It's right here in the relationships we have, the referrals that we're going to glean from those relationships. And because to your point, Tammy, I want to revisit what you said earlier. The database, most people prefer to work through referral. They're going to either be a past client or they were referred to you somehow. And so many times when that referral comes through, they're not ready to do something today. Only 30-40% of that time, maybe less, are they going to be ready to pull the trigger right now. And
Right.
This is where your follow-up has to make an impact and has to set the table so that none of this slips through the cracks. Because I mean, Tammy, if you have a gathering at your home and you've got some friends over and people start talking, and let's say you're not in real estate, people start talking about real estate, and I call you and you wind up saying, hey, you need to talk to my friend Mary. She and her husband are talking about, getting out of their lease now and, and buying a home. And I follow up on them, and it turns out they still have 11 months left on their lease. Well, we can have a strategy session. We can get to a kitchen table and get that prepared, but it's going to require follow-up. And there's a lot of things that can get between you and that referral if you aren't really on this thing called lead follow-up. and have a system to make it so. So that being said, Tammi, let me go back to our screen and let's set the table with a couple of fundamentals, and then we're going to get into our hacks that we're covering today to make this happen. Now, one of the things that we share with you in Never Ending Referrals, folks, is we build everything that we cover in our 8 lessons around this foundational principle. You know, it's funny, Tammi, that we've got a triangle or a pyramid here because, you know, you got MREA, you know, right? You know, leads, listings, leverage.
Yep.
Here, when I first got introduced to this, Gary Keller and Jay Papasan were having a conversation about leaders and how they built trust with the people they led. And they referenced this research from Harvard University. And it was essentially, gosh, what was that? What's their publication, Tammi? I went blank. Harvard Business Review. So in the Harvard Business Review, they had this article, and essentially it said, okay, the way that people establish trust with the people they lead is logic. You know, the people you lead know you can do it. They believe your reasoning and judgment are sound. And Tammi, what's the other one? What else?
Well, and there's reasons that they're at the bottom, right, on the widest part of the triangle. So it's logic. They have to trust that they know that you know what you're doing. And then they also have to experience empathy. And, you know, empathy is, you know, that you truly care about them, and by caring, you listen. And then ultimately, it's that you show up authentically you, right? You're not being inauthentic. And by the way, everybody knows when somebody's not being authentic with them. You can tell, right, when somebody's not being real. So it's all 3 of these things together that really establish the trust. And, you know, Steve, the reason you and I talk about this so much is we tend to live on the left side of that triangle, right? We feel like we just have to keep shooting the logic at people and telling them everything that we know about real estate without ever understanding where they're at and how we bring those 2 things together.
And, you know, Tammi, when you dovetail the logic with the empathy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, them knowing that you care, and then they know that they're experiencing the authentic you, all your conversations become rejection free. How would you guys feel? I put it in the chat. How would you feel if every conversation you knew you were having your database would never expose you to rejection? You never expose
Sign me up, Steve. Sign me up.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, because at the end of the day, when we truly understand how to be the trusted advisor, we truly understand how to have the care conversations, then all of a sudden it's rejection doesn't show up. And we never show up as salesy.
No.
Right. It's a whole different strategy. And by the way, Tammi, it can work for any behavioral style. You know, as a high assertive, you know, I've taken the position of being the trusted advisor. I can't be everybody's best friend because that wouldn't be authentic. You know, and we have a whole session where we dedicated to how do I show up authentically, being me, you know, succeeding with my database. So let's go into this a little deeper, Tammi. So as we go into this, let's get into hack number 1. Now, in the world of follow-up today, in fact, in our follow-up with you, we'll send you a follow-up email. We'll send you a sample of this community consulting guide that we established for one of my market centers. Some of our agents, we got together and we established this. And it was, what do we have to educate consumers about today? And here would be the first thing that I would have you write down. It's the free strategy session, and it's having a nurture mindset. So Tammi, by this, what we mean is if you have any plans to do real estate in the next 12 to 24 months, I want to get in front of you now. And I want to get in front of you now, and I want to educate you on the market. I want to educate you on interest rates. I want to educate you on where we are in the home values today. Are we overvalued? Are we fairly valued? What are the opportunities of today so that you're an informed consumer? And there's something about when we get to the kitchen table, Tammi, if they've got any interest in the next 24 months, because right now, what are we battling as real estate agents?
Interest rates.
We're battling interest rates. We're also battling all the what? Noise.
All the media.
The media, is it a good time or a bad time, and confusion about, okay, the Fed paused interest rate hikes, but they said they're going to rise it twice more this year. People are saying interest rates are going to come down because of election year, which probably isn't going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, not significantly. And that's a whole different webinar right there on being the trusted economist. And yet, Tammi, at the end of the day, we're in this place where there's so much noise that they don't know what to do. And when they don't know what to do, they do what? Nothing. They stay frozen. So I want you to know the first hack is get to a kitchen table and develop a guide. In fact, I want to play a game with you guys for a second. In the chat, I want you to go to the chat, open up your chat box. And my question for you is, are you an interest rate optimist? Meaning within the next 2 years, we're going to be sub 5% is par interest rate. Or are you an interest rate pessimist? You're not sure we'll ever see sub 5% interest rates in the next 5 to 10 years. So put it in there. Which one are you?
I love it.
I'll be curious to see the vote here, Tammi. Yeah. Take a position. Come on, keep getting there.
Yeah, I love it.
So far, it's kind of split. All right. Some of you might be mobile, can't chime in. That's okay. I don't care. That's right. You shouldn't care as an agent.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
We don't care as an agent, but does the consumer care?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Tammi, I'm gonna, I don't know, which one are you?
Pessimist.
Okay. I'm a pessimist too. And by the way, if you're an optimist, it doesn't mean you're wrong. And yet, here's the interesting thing, is with a consumer today, when I get to the kitchen table, I have to be certain. And if I'm an optimist, let me have something to back up my optimism and be absolutely certain. And that way, and let them borrow my certainty. And that doesn't mean you don't buy today. It means let's go buy and let's negotiate a 2-1 buy down. And then you can refinance it in 2 years when interest rates come down. And by the way, if they don't, then surprise, surprise, you're still okay because you bought now and there's not a lot of downside. And yet if you believe, and of course, we always say there's no crystal ball. Nope. And yet the reason I'm an interest rate pessimist, Tammi, is I can pull out in our consulting guide, we go through the history of interest rates, and we're actually 5.97% is the 20-year historical average. We're 6.5-ish or whatever, right now, just above that. And we are in inflationary times that really don't seem to be ebbing. We're seeing consumer incomes rise, demand on wages rising. And so I can explain all these pressures and why interest rates are likely to stay elevated. And so there's really not a reason for rates to come down. And if by the golly, I'm wrong and we have a horrible recession and they bring them way back, well, then you can refinance, so, but have a position either way. And this is where your consulting guide comes in. Tammi, we're seeing in some of our market centers an unusually high amount of fall off in transactions. And we believe that is predicated by so much noise that people get fearful and then they back off. And so the extra 20 minutes that you spend educating somebody, getting to the kitchen table, having that conversation will make all the difference in the world. Tammi, any last thoughts before we get past that?
No, keep going.
All right, let's go. And then, so hack number 1, strategy session. And then, of course, when it comes to follow-up, Tammi, as we're in this process of follow-up, today, as I do my DTD2, which we're going to talk about, I might get a couple of people say, well, follow up with me in January. And then the more that I continue this journey of making nurturing a priority, get to the kitchen table. And it's okay if I get to the kitchen table 7 or 8 months later, and
Mhm.
yet I'm putting into the future all these opportunities. And I've got an educated base. I've got people that I've earned their trust. I've sat down and, I trust that they'll feel like my judgment and reasoning is sound because I've educated them. Empathy, I'm not going to oversell them. I'm just going to help them get what they want and understand what they desire. And all of it's just being a real human being with them. Tammy, it's getting back to the trust triangle. And Tammy, the long-term power of the nurture, I mean, what do you want to add to that? Because when you look out in the future, can we really create predictability into the future with our pipeline or with opportunities in command or however we choose to do it?
It is, it's 110%. Write this down, guys. Your follow-up is anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And for, some people, when we talk about that, I know that on the inside, it might be like, oh, gulp, what? Well, if we know that people stay in their homes 7 to 10 years, then, we're always in a follow-up pattern with them. When you're reaching out to your database and it's just quarterly calls, that is follow-up, by the way. Follow-up is not just follow-up on a lead. Follow-up also includes following up with just the relationships that you have in your database. And so, are you reaching out at least 4 times a year? And that follow-up for them to do something personal with you might take 7 to 10 years. However, they can give you referrals all throughout that entire period of time. So it's about having those systems in place so that you stay in a relationship and you don't feel like you're calling and asking for business.
Well, and that's the thing, Tammy. We're going to give you the gambits that allow you to be of service to them even when they're not in the real estate business. I mean, that's the smart move, is how do I create the value in the relationship where they call me not just for their real estate needs, but for their community needs. Excuse me, I've got a cough, Tammy.
You're all good. Yeah, it really is. I'll never forget. I was on stage. Gary was talking about Angie's List. Are you all familiar with Angie's List? Angie's List is a place where folks can subscribe and go to when they're looking for a referral for a service provider, an industry person in their area. And he said something that really resonated with Steve and I. And he said, there is zero reason that Angie's List exists. They shouldn't be going to something called Angie's List or even, looking for reviews online. They should be going to you. Now, we're all used to giving them the referrals for, things that have to do with their real estate needs. What about their lifestyle needs? Write this down, guys. If you become their lifestyle concierge, you have it. You literally have it. And you teach them to reach out to you when they need anything that has to do with their life, not just their real estate needs. It's all about staying in relationship with people. And the real estate things happen automatically through that just ongoing relationship and conversation that you're having.
Yeah, and they'll absolutely do that if we set that up from the beginning, especially people who come in new to the area, Tammy, or they move across town. They don't have access to what the things they had before. And, they're having to rely on somebody. And if we can condition them to rely more on us, well, then that gives us more reasons to be of service. So Tammy, let's go through this hack right here, because, one of the things that our technology allows us to do is, get them onto our technology where we can kind of monitor, their activity and what they're doing, and talk to us about, we've heard neighborhood nurture smart plans. Talk to us about this thing called the Save Search.
Well, I love the Save Search. I love when technology can support our conversations and do some of the touches in between. So, if you're in command, and we're going to walk through what this looks like in command, if I had a conversation with someone, whether it was over the phone or maybe I ran into them out somewhere, or I got to the kitchen table like Steve was just talking about, just to educate them on what's happening. One of the things that I would ask is if they would like to be updated on everything that's happening in the area where they live. Now, I would ask like 2 other things also, Steve. So I'm going to have you guys write this down before we show you how to do it. I would also ask, is there a neighborhood where if you can wave a magic wand and you could live there. Would you like to know what's going on over there as well? And then the third one is there anywhere that you might like to own investment property at some point, or maybe the dream house? I like to know 3 different areas where they'd like to be informed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into command, and this is very different than the neighborhood nurture, guys. So if you'd like to take screenshots of this, or get your phone and take some screenshots as we go through, I just want you to be prepared so you can do that. So the way you would do that is you would go into command, you would go into your contacts, you would open up a particular contact, or you would add them if they're not already in your contact. Once you do, it looks like this. And then over to the right-hand side, you'll see where it says save searches, and you'll click on that. Once you click on that, if you have any saved searches for them, it'll be there, or you can create a custom save search by clicking on the prompt that's in the middle. Now, once you do that, you'll click on that, and then it's going to take you where you can either search by location, which that's always been there, guys. Now, here's the new part that's really cool. Or you can actually click on draw on a map. And when you click on that, it opens up the map, and you'll put like a zip code or a city there, by the way, in that where it says, you see that little magnifying glass, you would put in like a zip code or a city, and then you would click on draw on map, and it opens that up. And with your mouse, you can just take it and you can just draw a circle in an area. So maybe they're not looking in a designated master planned community, or something that doesn't show up in our neighborhoods in that neighborhood nurture smart plan. And it allows you to very, very customize that search. And it is super, super cool. Right. Go ahead and you can click off of that. I think that's the last one, right?
Well, and here's the cool thing about the save search, Tammy. You can get to set the frequency.
Yeah.
So with the neighborhood nurture smart plans, either monthly or twice a month, with this, I think we can get as much as like daily.
Daily. You can. And it's so much more precise than just the neighborhood nurture. And again, have a conversation where you're notifying them around multiple things, and then ask them how often they'd like to be updated, and then honor that. Right. And it's just a cool way to bring value and remind them who you are as the trusted real estate professional. And then you stay in relationship with them using the Ford method and the other things that we teach.
Yeah. Well, and Tammy, the great part of it is it gets them onto my technology.
I love it.
And I can, get notified on these activities and see
That's right.
what they're doing. And that's such a big impact. Well, let's keep going. And so one of the things that, if you've never seen this video, we'll send a link to you in the follow-up to this, is Gary in the database. And, as we're wrapping up this conversation, or, about follow-up, Gary talks about the old-fashioned tickler system he used to build Keller Williams on. And I think it's just a great way to make you think about, how vital this is, how you can build an entire real estate company, on a metal box, because you did the follow-up, because you did the most important work. So the last hack we're going to focus on today, Tammy, is blasting our way into the mind. And, this comes from Reese and Trout. And this is one of our sessions in Never Ending Referrals. We really get into this. How do we go win the mind share battle? And I love this from the 22 immutable laws of marketing, Tammy. They say, if you want to make a big impression on another person, you cannot worm your way into their mind and then slowly build up a favorable opinion over a period of time. The mind doesn't work that way. You have to blast your way into the mind. And so, Tammy, this takes work. It's not simple. And we say the real way to do it might be, what we call the 8x8. And where's the history of 8x8? Where does that come from?
Well, and I love this. There was a company called Hobbs Herder. They were a marketing company, and they went out and they took a geographic area, and over the period of 8 weeks, they sent all of those folks once a week a postcard with a fictitious realtor on them, or a not real real estate agent on them. And at the end of the 8 weeks, everyone, they had a call center reach out and ask those folks, hey, if you were recommending a real estate agent, who would you recommend? And if you like, it's just amazing how gullible we all are. 68% of them recommended a real estate agent that didn't even exist. And that's where the 8x8 came from. And that's why we use it and why it's so effective. I love to share that because so often we just like, we hear we're supposed to do that and then put people on a 36 touch, and yet we don't understand why.
Mhm.
And it's highly, highly effective. It's the same reason that when you shop for something online, if you don't buy it, it follows you around every time that you're on the internet, right? And it's because of the power of putting things in front of people. And so one of the very first things we do is put people on an 8x8.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to give you a little brief video clip. This is from one of our interviews that we do on Never New Referrals. This is part of an interview with David Huffaker. David typically gets anywhere from a $54 to a $71 return for every dollar he spends on his database. Think about that. Yeah, 2022 was $71 for every dollar spent on the database. and it was a big return. That was a $230 million year in sales, 46% from the database, $1 producing $71. And he talks about the importance of the 8x8 in launching their new relationships that are new to their database. Let's take a few minutes and listen to David.
Right. So it's, for me, I always tease, like, they don't realize it, but they just agreed to let me brainwash them. Right. Like, they've just said, like, yes, marketing wise, psychology wise, you can stay in touch with me periodically about real estate. Awesome. I'm going to drop some information in the mail. So the first thing that goes out, to handwritten thank you card. Right. We put 2 business cards in there. Handwritten, hey, great to talk to you. You know, sorry your team lost this weekend, blah, 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 whatever. Mail it out so that they get it. Early on, I'd go to Walgreens and buy the 99-cent on clearance thank you cards. Like, again, I don't know overall that it really matters. Now we got fancy branded ones, but again, it's the touch point. They get it in the mail, they open it up. Hey, the Huffaker guy did what he said he was going to do. He actually sent me some information, right? So that's week 1. An easy way to know if you've done 5 a week, put 5 thank you cards on the corner of your desk. If they're still there on Friday, you didn't get your 5 people, right? If you did, you're just writing your thank you card, dropping them in the mail. Second week comes around, we're sending them a text. Hey, it's David over at the Huffaker group. Just following up to make sure you get the thank you card I sent over. Again, could there be a more beautiful message? I'm sure there is, right? But for me, again, it's just a different medium. Hey, yeah, I got it. No, I didn't get it, whatever, right? Week 3 comes by and we send out a trifold brochure. And so any item of value will work, right? We're coming up on the spring, right? Like, send out some, who are the top 5-star reviews for lawn care in your area? Print it off of Google and fold it up and put it in an envelope, right? Or, go to a gutter cleaning service or a window washing service and say, hey, do you want to give me a 10% coupon to mail to my database, right? Any of the things there would be a great item of value. We have a beautiful trifold brochure. We take an insert. Each of our agents have their own insert because we want to make sure we brand our agent and not us. And so always, just as a side note, always think of the Huffaker group like State Farm. We're the powerful brand with the value and the platform behind our agent, but our agent is the reason that the consumer will hire them, right? And so we always want to support our agents in growing their businesses. So the trifold brochure goes out now. Week 4, it's been a month. So now I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call them, right? Hey, it's David, just following up with you. I want to make sure you're getting the information that we sent over. I told you I was going to stay in touch, and I want to make sure I did that. So I always use that script because I always think about, like, my weatherman. I don't really trust him because he tells me it's going to rain and then it doesn't rain. The little things in life matter, right? And so I want to remind them, like, hey, I said I was going to do something and I did it. Like, that's rare in this day and age, to be honest with you. I mean, how many people call you and say they're going to do something? How many people did you meet at Mega Camp that said they were going to follow up with you, right? We don't do it on purpose. It just happens, right? So on that phone call, I want to remind them I'm doing what I said I was going to do. And I really don't bring up real estate. How you doing? What's going on? Still, I'm just building a relationship, right? Week 5, we have a jumbo postcard that we send out with just, hey, here's what we've done. Here's our team stats. Here's some important information. Week 6, another text message goes out. Week 7, we send a fridge magnet, something with a little bit more shelf life since it's the last item of value we're going to mail. And then week 8, we're going to do that phone call. Again, it's been 2 months. I've now called them twice in 2 months. I'm not being overly pushy. That conversation, I'm typically going to bring up real estate. Hey, just staying in touch. I'm going to call you from time to time. You know, anybody from work or church that may be looking to make a move that we could work with, right? So as we do that, right, we're building that, and immediately we do put them on our newsletter program. So they're also getting a print newsletter. They also get into our web of follow-up. So they're also getting our e-newsletters. We actually, one of the cool tricks, one of the only things I've ever done that I didn't copy from someone else, and I'm sure someone else does it, was that we export our database every month and upload it to Facebook as a custom audience. And then Facebook goes and looks for all those phone numbers and email addresses.
So
All right. So that's just part of that great interview with David Huffaker. And Tammy, so dissect that for just a minute. So I'm going to put this back up on the screen. There's David's 8x8 that he just described to you. If you want to screenshot that, and he described it, but thoughts.
Well, he's super intentional about it. And we put this together so that you all can do exactly what David said. I mean, he was, we're all about R&D, rip off and duplicate what works. And when they customize this 8x8, they've got a goal of just meeting 5 new people every single week. And the very first touch is just, thank you, nice to meet you cards. And you'll see it's super simple. These are things that you can have ready in advance. And if you go back and you watch the video that we are going to send you about Gary in the box, I've shared with you, Steve, that when I started my business 19 years ago, I literally, the 8x8 is so important. It is so important that oftentimes technology can render us not so effective, that I went and got one of those plastic, it's like a plastic box that hangs the folders hang inside of it. Do you all know what I mean? And I had 8 folders in there. And as I met people, I just had a piece of paper with everybody on it. And I moved that paper from week to week to week. And every single week on Monday, I pulled them out and I looked and I made notes on there and did what I was supposed to do. And I moved them to the next week. It's that important in launching a relationship to be in front of people and do what David said, that I'm going to be in touch with you and I'm going to share these things with you, because so many people say they're going to and they don't. And that's what makes it really difficult for us then to pick up the phone, right? Because we're like, oh, I kind of dropped the ball on that person and that just feels kind of weird. I don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. Well, and when we keep in touch and we do what we say we're going to do, and we send out things that have items of value. I love, if you can get current events in your area and you just do something every 2 months. Like it's a postcard that you can create yourself. By the way, you can get cardstock and create those where it's a duplicate on the top of the cardstock and the bottom and cut it in half. You could literally have those yourself in the office. And all you do is just send that out. That's one of your touches in your 8x8. And it has shelf life, like David said. It's something that people will hang on to and they go back. And every single time they look at it, look what they're doing. They're looking at your face. That's branding. It's awesome.
Well, and you heard him say exactly. He said, of course, once we finish up the 8x8, then they get on our touch campaign. They get the emails. We teach a 50 touch in Never Ending Referrals. And, this is just an overview of that. And it's, a combination of email, direct mail, multi-channel, using your social touches. Here's a sample of 2 pages of a 4-page newsletter that our agents have developed. That's the card, Tammy, that features a local artist on one side. The back side, it's got the events that you just talked about. It goes out every month. And then, when on the non-newsletter months, the newsletter is quarterly. On the non-newsletter months, it's an infographic jumbo postcard, with a call to action and an interpretation, of the statistics on the other side. And we said for all those things to be effective, Tammy, you got to have a what?
You got to have a relationship. You got to have a conversation.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the goats, but oh well. The conversation is the relationship, right? And then, of course, we're not going to really go into it today, but we're going to send you, our DTD2 schedule. If you've taken Never Ending Referrals or Bold, you've been exposed to DTD2, which stands for Do the Database 2. And our next, informative webinar, we'll dive deeper into this. But this is one of those things where you want to learn more about DTD2 and make sure you have that quarterly phone call. And this is where you take your database and divide it into 13 2-letter groups. And you use the power of DTD2 to make sure those conversations occur. So guys, we have a free gift for you for being on here today. If you'll stand by for just a second, in a moment, we'll throw a link in the chat for the gift. For thank you for being with us today. First, we want to tell you about our program, Never Ending Referrals. We have 8 sessions. We take you right through the lessons of being the master of your database. How do I turn this into my greatest business asset that it is? How do I get to a 10% or better return on my database? In fact, this outline you've got in the linked in the chat right now, if you'd like to pull that down. Now we have, of course, the interviews that we do. We do want to invite you, Megan, if you'll go ahead and put the link to enroll in Never Ending Referrals. We begin again with the 8 lessons on July 10th. If you decide to join up today, we have a bonus section next week, Monday. We're going to go through something we do every quarter for our members is we go through and we give you the market of the moment conversations. What are the conversations we should be having right now with our database? And then we're also going to go through that consumer guide. What's that conversation I should be having at those with the consumers at that kitchen table? And we've got a bonus session next week, Monday. So if you'll join us today in Never Ending Referrals, the link is in the box. You can go to neverendingreferrals.com to check us out, to be part of Never Ending Referrals. It's $39 a month. There's a 5-month commitment. And after that, you can stay with us. You can decide to say, hey, I've got everything I needed. Tammy, of course, what else should they know about Never Ending Referrals? Tell them about the portal, the recorded features, what they've got there.
Yeah. So, gosh, Steve, we have folks that have been with us for over 2 years, actually, because we're constantly updating and changing our conversations and helping people with the market of the moment. Our sessions are done the first 3 Mondays of every month. They start at noon Central. They run for an hour. And they are recorded and they are uploaded within 24 hours to an online portal that you have access to. Inside that online portal, guys, you actually have access to everything that we've done. It doesn't start just from the date you join. All of the expert interviews that Steve and I have done with just amazing agents that are just knocking it out of the park, all these different ways that they're doing it with their database too, because there's so many ways to succeed through your database. It's not just one way. And all of those interviews are in there. You have access to that on demand. So, if you can't make it on Monday at noon Central, you can always watch the recordings. Yeah. And then your free gift for today.
And by the way, this is only available today for free. So if you go on to Amazon, there's a link, I believe, in the chat. And today only, we've made it free on Amazon to download the ebook. So if you have Audible credits, it's available on Audible. Or if you like a hard copy, it's $7.99. And but we want to give you a free copy as a thank you. It's about a 2-hour read. It's done more in a story parable type format to really give you some of the foundation of how you kind of pivot to a relationship-based business, and takes one agent through the struggles of shifting from a business that's hard, where they're struggling with prospecting, to really building a relationship-based business. And it's called Rescue Dogs in Real Estate, and would love a 5-star review on Amazon after you've read the book. And most importantly, Tammy and I would love to have you on with us next Monday as we kind of kick off our session. So questions, thoughts, I'd love to hear a few ahas from the field today. Throw it in the chat. Give us a couple of ahas.
Love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Mm-hmm. All right, no questions, or you're typing a really long question.
I think it's a long question. Well, guys, here's what we'll say. Exciting time right now in real estate. It's certainly challenged. This is the time you get to shine. And going out and taking this position as that trusted advisor with your database, it has never mattered more. And the consumer is extremely confused, and it really is our job to be that person that they can then go to, that they can lean on to make good decisions. And here's what we know, Tammy. I don't think anybody that bought a house from you this year would be complaining 10 years from now that they bought a house from you this year.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's wealth building. It's the best asset that we can help people, navigate their way through. And we want to thank you for being with us today. Tammi, any last words?
No, I hats off to all of you. Time spent building your database and finding ways to bring value to that database and stay in touch with them is the most important ROI you can get. Your return on investment when you invest in that database and those relationships is huge, way bigger than anything you could ever do to buy leads. So hats off to all of you.
Yeah, John said it really well. He said, appreciate the discussion of flow and connection with the consumer by having conversation in the market of the moment, avoiding the noise, and also good to see the 8x8 touch more.
Thanks.
Because John, it's none of these things they're simple to implement, but they're not easy, and they require intentionality. And again, that's our job, is to bring you, these tools so that you have shortcuts, that you can find, okay, what's the way it's being done successfully, and I can make that work in my business. So trust we'll see some of you on Monday. Otherwise, Tammi, thank you, partner.
Until next time.
We'll see you.
Steve, thanks everybody.